Yo, hello everybody.
What is up?
What's
we
up,
back,
my dude?
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Pixelists podcast. And we're recording this. This is not our norm, not our usual. Thanks for hanging with us. It is currently one day till it's Wednesday, my dudes. One day away from Thursday, Critical Role Day. And we're recording this episode a little late. So before we get into that, though, I'm Blake. That's Will.
That's me.
Yeah, sorry.
No.
We're the Pixelists, and we like to talk about all things nerdy that we enjoy. So we talk about Marvel, we talk about D&D, other random shows, movies, games that we really enjoy. And we just, it's a talk show. We literally just talk about the things that we love, and we theorize like our best ideas for what's going to happen. And so you are joining us to discuss the latest episode 6 of Critical Role Campaign 3. Sure. And we're happy to have you here today. So don't forget, we are on Twitter. If we're ever like not publishing on the right day, you can always check out our Twitter at the Pixelists to kind of know what's going on. And also we do have a podcast, the Pixelists podcast, literally on any podcast platform, mostly Spotify, actually, now that I think about it. But having said that, apologies that we're recording late today. We had a couple things happen. My guy, you just keep going on awesome vacations. So I need you to stop enjoying life and be available for Critical Role.
Trust me, I'm glad to be home and hopefully home for a while now. But yeah, I was out of town this past weekend.
Are you a homebody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Are you?
Yeah, I think so.
I definitely am.
I think after like once I've like had my like route, like once I've gone and done, like I'm like, yeah, I think I'm good. I think I'm ready to, release back into my home.
Yeah. No,
I envision potential Dune spoiler when a certain someone's in like the big tar bowl, or he's just like the thing, I kind of envision me and my just like, yeah.
I bet that feels nice.
It does.
Like a nice spa.
We'll talk about Dune later, I guess.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely a homebody. And yeah, glad to be home. But so yeah, my apologies. This was totally my fault for us recording late. I've been out of town since Thursday. But we're back. I actually just got to watch the episode yesterday. I think you did too. So even though we're really late recording this, it's fresh on our minds because we just saw it. But yeah, so today it is episode 6, right?
Yes, episode 6.
So we're talking about episode 6 today, but the good news is that this is so late, only 24 hours away from episode 7. So,
there's a lot to talk about too today. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to talk about. Some big implications, and like you said, only 24 hours till episode 7. So kind of a good thing, I guess.
Yeah, silver lining, right? But before we jump into our normal episode, a few things I wanted to hit on really quick is, first of all, happy birthday, my guy. Blake just had a birthday a couple days ago. Since I was out of town, I missed it, but just wanted to wish you a happy birthday.
1 year older. And 1 year closer to death.
True. But actually, since I was out of town, I didn't get to give you your gift, but I had a little helper, and your gift is with you right now. It's behind the white sign is what I was told.
Okay. Is it a jackal? All right, hang on.
Yeah. I will have a sip of my coffee during this dead air.
I'm amazed that I didn't see this before when I came in. Normally, like when the sign's set up, because it's like an office, so it's like a disaster back there. Thanks, my guy. Am I opening this on camera?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, you don't have to. If that's
it's
like
not anything. It's not anything offensive, is it? Or...
No. Just a little something.
All right, let's take a look here. All right. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Oh my gosh, this is awesome. This is awesome.
Do you remember that?
Robbie Damon's shirt.
Yeah,
dude, from Exandria Unlimited. Awesome shirt. Popular meme format and an excellent shirt. Thank you, my friend. That
You're
is
welcome,
an amazing birthday gift.
You're welcome.
Everyone else, you can send your birthday gifts to the address in the top comment.
P.O. Box. Yeah. Coming soon.
Thank you, my dude.
Of course,
cool, man. I'm going to love wearing that shirt. And then I think also what's really cool for you guys who are watching, who you also love D&D. I think for me, part of the joy of D&D is also like inviting other people into it. It's a very inclusive circle. And like when people get it and it clicks, they're like, oh, this is awesome. So it'll be fun to wear that shirt and people will be like, what the heck is that? And be like, oh, I'm glad you asked.
Let me tell you.
So anyway, well, cool, man. Thank you, my dude.
You're welcome, dude. Happy birthday.
All right, well, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple other things I wanted to just briefly mention before we started was, I think last episode, which was like 2 weeks ago, because, you know, Critical Role was off for a week and then, you know, I've been out of town, so it's been a minute. We mentioned we were going to do Hawkeye, which I think I think today the 4th episode of Hawkeye came out. We haven't done any yet because, like I said, been out of town and stuff. So I don't know if we're still going to do that. I think if anything, we might like do a video once the whole show's done and we could kind of talk about our thoughts on it. But just in case any of you were like, you guys, where is that? You said it was coming. I just wanted to update you there. And then looking forward, I think we're going to do The Witcher, which that comes out pretty soon. We still need to figure out.
Is it soon?
Yeah, dude. It's in like a week.
What?
It's a little over a week. It comes out the day after Spider-Man No Way Home comes out.
December 17th.
Yeah. So since that's a
Holy
Netflix
crap.
show, yeah, I don't know, like
the Netflix shows are weird. We need to hear you guys on what you think that format looks like. Because typically what happens is we watch it, we talk about it, and kind of the fun is getting y'all's ideas for like, this is what I think's happening. Like that's been really fun with Critical Role. It's different with a Netflix show because like it's all there.
Because
right?
It comes out once.
So definitely want to hear what you guys think. What's still the episodic format? And you know, you watch episode 1 and then you hear what we think. I don't know. I mean, I'd love to hear what you guys think is the best, or what other channels you guys follow, what that typically looks like. So we'd either do like a schedule of like, you know, 1 a week, or maybe we just watch them all and talk about the whole show, kind of like maybe what we'll do with Hawkeye. But yeah, I wanted to mention that. And then we haven't done any movies yet, but bro, I think we're gonna have to do an episode of this after Spider-Man with just like all the craziness that seems to be coming with that. Have you bought your tickets yet? That's the important
I did.
question.
Did you?
Oh no. I was trying to gatekeep you, and then you did, and I was like, "Oh, dang!"
Bro, it was crazy because they were like all sold out like instantly. I just barely got a couple seats for Ashley and I.
Can I mention that IMAX is not as good as it was when we were younger? Like the theater I went to for Dune, the seats were, you know, like I feel like we're all used to like the lean back seat. You know, it's like really cozy and comfy. They didn't have those seats. It was like old seats.
Did you go here?
So I was like, yeah.
Interesting.
Bummer. Anyway. Well, we've probably jibber-jawed enough about random things.
Yep.
You want to get to talking about the episode?
Yeah, I guess let's talk about what we're here for. Critical Role episode 6.
Growing Bonds and Teasing Threads.
Oh, yeah. We usually don't have the episode title when we do this.
Got you.
That's fancy. All right. And so for those of you that are new to us, what we like to start with is a recap of the episode, you know, help people keep all the information fresh, and such long form content. You know, sometimes you just need a recap. So anyway, we do cut this out and put the recap by itself on YouTube as well, just to, you know, have that content there for those of you that need it. So if you happen to be on that recap video right now, hello from the past. But also, if you're interested in hearing Blake and I's actual discussion, theory crafting, and everything, we will link to the full video down below. So feel free to check that out. But yeah, without further ado, I guess let's jump right into this. Okay, so the episode picks up right where we left off last time, with the party heading to the Spire by Fire to kind of rest and lick their wounds after this, you know, big battle with Duggar and their, you know, conversation with Esterosh last week, or, you know, a couple weeks ago at this point. But anyway, so they arrive at the Spire by Fire, and Ashton basically has this great idea to play a game and kind of learn more about each other. And the game is called What the Fuck's Up With That? And it's very simple. How it works is, well, he buys some liquor, so it's just like a drinking game. But the rules are simple. They basically roll a dice, and whoever rolls the highest gets to ask a question of whoever rolled the lowest. And Ashton says that, you're allowed to be vague, you don't have to incriminate anyone, but you have to be honest. And so the party's like, yeah, let's do this. But FCG is like, well, what do I do if I don't drink? And everyone's like, oh yeah, you don't drink. They're like, what happens if you do drink? So he does like take a shot really quick, and the liquid just disappears inside of him and doesn't seem to have any effect. So they're like, here, FCG, you just eat these pieces of copper. That's what you'll do instead of drinking. Anyway, so the game begins, and in the first round, we have Laudna asking Dorian a question. So Dorian rolled the lowest, Laudna the highest, and she wants to know about his fancy clothes, his like upkept demeanor. He always looks so clean, and like he comes from wealth. So she's like, what's up with that? And he says, it is wealth, but it's inherited wealth. And they're like, oh my gosh, are you a lord, or are you a prince? And he's like, no, it's not like that. Well, not really. And he says he is second in line to a prominent family that has a lot of money, but it's a family, probably no one's ever heard of. And it's clear that he's not really comfortable talking about this. And FCG asks why he's embarrassed of his family. And he's like, I'm not really embarrassed. Like, my family, they're good people. But sometimes, just being a good person is not enough. And he claims that he had these expectations for himself that he like wanted to fulfill for his family, but he wasn't able to. And so he decided to kind of strike on his own and, carve out his own destiny at that point. And that's essentially the end of his round. Round two, we have Fern asking Ashton if they've ever been in love before. And Ashton says they don't know. And the party kind of talks about like the different kinds of love, like romantic love, like friendship love. And Ashton says they think they have loved someone before, and it was about 10 years ago. And he doesn't really reveal much more about that, but he does say, I did have love for my old crew, in the way, like a friendship type of love. And he reveals that his old crew was called the Nobodies. And it was basically this group of people the kids that had they'd all grown up together. But he reveals that they have all left town except for him. And the party asks like, well, what happened? And he says, that's another question. So he doesn't reveal anything more than that. In round three, we have Fresh Cut Grass asking Fern what her greatest regret is. And she thinks about this for a while and then isn't quite ready to talk about it. So she, takes a shot and asks if there's another question that FCG has. So FCG asks, okay, what are you, Orem, and Dorian in Drusar for? Like, why are y'all here? And she says that they came to this place to meet up with some friends of Orem, but really that was, more of Orem's thing, and that would really be a question for him. And so FCG asks yet a third question and just asks about her thievery, how like why she steals so much.
Sticky fingers.
Yeah, exactly. And she reveals that it's not really about the thrill of like actually taking something. It's more that she just loves to collect things and have things. And she talks about back home in her bedroom how she just has like this huge collection of trinkets from, that she's collected from her different travels. And just in that conversation, she also reveals that, she lived with her grandmother Maury, and, this was in the Feywild. And that basically concludes that round. In round four, Laudna asks Imogen how she's feeling about her father and the fact that, she had to kind of reveal him as collateral to the Hubak Corsairs. And Imogen reveals that, she's nervous, but she had a really good feeling about the Corsairs. And so she doesn't think they're going to just, like do anything to her dad for no reason. Plus, he's pretty far away in their town, which is in the Talland Highlands. But then she does reveal a bit about her life growing up. We find out that she hasn't always had these, telepathic abilities. They are rather new to her. New meaning like the last few years, but hasn't always had them. And she reveals that, it's probably better for her dad that she has left. She thinks he's probably happier and living a better life, because once she had these abilities on set, it became hard for her to be around people. So she kind of had to be reclusive, which meant her father kind of had to be reclusive. Plus they were getting, like weird looks, and it was like the rumors around the town, like what's up with Imogen, and so it was very kind of socially awkward and lonely. So she thinks her dad's probably doing better that she's gone, and she does reveal that she was pretty miserable up until Laudna came to town, and she said that was the first time she felt any peace. And we find out that they have been traveling together for about 2 years now. Then in round 5, we have Fern asking a question of Orem, but she says, I know Orem pretty well, so instead she takes a question from Ashton to ask Orem, and he just asks, okay, what are you guys doing here? Like, why are you here? What's going on? And Orem says that he is here on a mission for his hometown, Zephyra, that someone attacked his home, and he is here to learn more. And that certain breadcrumbs had kind of pointed them to Drusar, and that's why they're here, to find out more. And we find out more about this later, but that's all he reveals in this moment. So then in round 6, we have Orem asking F.C.G., and Orem asks, he wants to know more about F.C.G's origin. And Orem says that, like, I've only seen one thing kind of like you in my days, and it wasn't even that much like you. So he's like, are your brothers and sisters like the only ones like you that you've met? Like, he's basically just asking more about F.C.G's origin, and like, kind of just wants to shed some light on that. But F.C.G. starts to answer, but he gets like stuck, and he just starts repeating the same word over and over. He's like, I am, and he does that a couple times, and the party's like, whoa, like, what's going on? Can he not like access these memories, or is there like certain information he's not allowed to like, access? And Orem's like, hey, I'm so sorry. Like, he realizes he's asking too much, and so he instead changes the question to how old are you? And F.C.G. says that they were with Dancer for 2 years, so I guess I'm 2 years old. And Fern loves that because she loves babies. And basically, oh yeah, Dorian asks, also, he didn't really have a question, but I guess he just asked this anyway. He asks if F.C.G. can dream. And F.C.G. says he doesn't think he can, but he's going to start trying to tonight. And then finally, we have round 7, which is kind of the biggest one. Save the best for last, where we have F.C.G. asking Laudna a question, and he asks, are you dead? Like, what the fuck's up with that? And Laudna says she's not entirely sure. She thinks she probably is, but she thinks maybe she's like at some sort of cross between, life and death. She says she definitely did die, and then just woke up one day surrounded by other corpses. She said all of Whitestone was in a panic of a death and a nightmarish, and so she just ran away, and that was 30 years ago. Whatever happened, she was like hit with like a necromantic blast, she says, and boom, she woke up and she was alive. She reveals that she was 20 years old when this happened. And since that was 30 years ago, in a way, she's like 50, but she still looks 20. And she also says that she thinks she was only dead for about 48 hours. She remembers all of her previous life, and we do have confirmation that she is human. Like that's her race, or at least it was her race. And so we just get a bunch about her backstory here, and she reveals that she had magical abilities even as a young girl. So like her magic isn't new from like, being undead or whatever. And she says that her parents were just like these simple, humble farmers on the outskirts of Whitestone. They were pretty naive, not really keen to the political goings on of Whitestone, and they basically just wanted a better life for their daughter. So the fact that she had these magical abilities, they were like, here, like you can make something of yourself. And the implication is that like they kind of give her over to the Briarwoods, who are the custodians of Whitestone during this time, like the leaders. And since her parents were naive, they didn't really understand what was happening. And one thing led to another, I guess, but all we know is that Laudna was killed, presumably by the Briarwoods. And the rest is this kind of history. We don't know why, but she died and now has been brought back. She also reveals that her parents are dead, and that basically for the last 30 years she has just been traveling from town to town, kind of setting up in the woods and being the spooky undead witch until like the townspeople find out and run her out of town. And so that's just been what she's doing up until she met Imogen, and they've been traveling together for the.
And there's the detail too that she hears.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good. And yeah, we do find out that she hears a voice in her head that is presumably we don't have confirmation of that in this moment, but it's Delilah Briarwood.
Okay, because they said D Briarwood, and I didn't know who D was. So
okay. And
interesting. I never saw campaign 1, so I don't know what this means.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. So yeah, and that basically wraps up her, and that basically wraps up the entire game. There's a little moment where Dorian plays a song for everyone, and Imogen actually reads his mind because being so like she's a little intoxicated and she kind of doesn't have her walls up, so she's kind of just like an unfiltered telepath. And Dorian Robbie actually goes and whispers to Laura what she finds out, which we don't find out in this moment, but we do find out later, a little bit later, that he was just thinking of his mother while he was playing that song. And Laudna also in this moment gives Dorian a Bertrand doll that she made out of chicken bones and Bertrand's hair, and he's like, "Oh, thanks."
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And then one other cute, quick little moment was Fern takes F.C.G. and turns him upside down to see if like that where the liquid went, and it does come back out of his mouth, and she just drinks it. But anyway, so everyone goes to bed, and we do have a little moment of right before Laudna goes to sleep that she hears that voice in her head, and she says, "Careful, dear, some things are meant to be kept secret." Ooh. Anyway, so they all go to sleep, and the next morning they wake up. They're kind of deciding, what should we do, but ultimately land on going to meet with the Hubot Corsairs again and fill them in on, everything that's happened, that they found and defeated Duggar, and just kind of get caught up. So they make their way there, use the phrase, "We've come to loosen the snare," which is the good phrase, and they're taken back to the same area, and they end up talking to Yash once again, who they talked to last time. And they basically just fill him in, tell him about Duggar. And the main thing they talk about is making that connection with Esteros to see if, they could make that relationship. So they present that to Yash, and he tells them, "Oh yeah, I'm familiar with Esteros, the inheritor of Mistress Prudage." And he's like, "There's a lot of rumors about that guy, that maybe he killed Mistress Prudage, or maybe he's a vampire," which we'll talk about that. And he's like, "Yeah, I don't really trust people who've inherited money. Like, they're usually not aligned with the same things that, we're trying to do." And the party's like, "Yeah, we think you guys might have some things in common." And so Yash says, "I'll think about it. And, if we do meet, it'll have to be on our terms. And, we'll come and find you and let you know if we want that connection to be made." And so the party's like, "Okay, cool." And they basically decide to leave on that. And do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, totally. Great job, by the way. So the party decides okay, maybe our next line of direction would be going back to Lord Esteros and talking to him. But they also decide, maybe we should dip into the Crook House and see if anyone knows anything else about maybe the Anger or Rashad Breggio, same person, obviously. And so they make their way to the Crook House, and Milo's missing, but inside is Annie Atta, who's reading a book. And Ashton makes this joke of like, "I didn't know you could read." And, they kind of talk back and forth. They ask him questions, ask about Broomstone. And he's like, "I've never even heard of that. I don't know what that is." And, really asks about the Anger. Like, "Hey, what do you know about the Anger?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I mean, the Loomis twins," which we had known. I think we had known that name before, and we had known that, like, these were one of, like, the noble houses, one of the Mahan houses.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, Annie says, yeah, the Loomis twins hired the Anger, and they're kind of like, yeah, maybe we should go talk to them. And he's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, good luck with that. Pretty much just pointing out that like the noble families are extremely exclusive and isolated, and they, would not allow, they actually maybe even fear poor people more, people like them, than they would, the politics of other rich people.
Yeah.
So they're talking more about it, and F.C.G is mentioning, hey, how's your practicing going for this performance that Annie's been preparing for in the previous scenes we've seen with them. And F.C.G is like, yeah, if you want, you could practice, or you could play in front of Dorian. Dorian's is a musician, and Annie's a bit ego's a little threatened by this, and is like, oh yeah, okay, you're a musician, sure. And they have like sort of like this Devil Went Down to Georgia-esque playoff jam session against one another. And naturally, the party, this was very much reminded me of EXU episode 4 or 5 with the talent show, but everyone really throws in their own like pizzazz onto Dorian. Like Orium does druidcraft to get this flower to appear over his ear. And Imogen does like, I think it was like dancing lights or something that spell out the Dorian storm above his heads. But the really awesome thing about this was they're doing a roll off basically. And Dorian's like, okay, yeah, I wonder what I'll roll. And he has to roll with advantage because of all this awesome stuff. And he rolls a natural 20. And it's just such a cool moment. And they're like, oh, but you have advantage. And he's like, well, I mean, it's not going to roll another natural 20. And he rolls it. And it's a second natural 20 in a row. And like everyone loses their mind.
That's crazy.
It's so cool. So fun. Long story short, he beats Annie in this jam session. And Annie, frustrated, sort of storms out of the room. And Imogen's like, Annie, are you okay? And anyway, Storm slams the door and then opens it and says, Ashton, by the way, you have a letter in your room. Ashton goes, looks at the letter. We don't know what it says. In fact, later on, Imogen convinces him to let her see the letter, but he redacts most of it.
Yeah.
And so there was some like small detail that was on there. I can't remember what it was, but very vague. And again, the majority of it is redacted.
Right.
And Ashton basically says like, he's pretty frustrated with this letter. He's shook by it. And is basically like, I don't want to get you guys involved in this yet. Like, we kind of need to let this, whatever's in this letter, sort of play out before we address it. But since he's so upset by it, he does say basically, I need to go speak to Ephid. And starts calling for Ephid, goes over to Ephid's house. And it's like this ramshacked fishing cottage is kind of what I envision, like little fishing net all over the place. And this Esfari? I don't know how to pronounce it.
I don't know how to use furry or something. We need to. It's
like a bird, basically. Yeah. Old bird dude. Very creepy character, by the way. Yes. So cool. Sort of slinks his, very much like old Greg, by the way. If you know that video, very old Gregish. Sort of slinks in and, hello. And they have like this conversation, and they do similar to what they've done in previous scenes. They basically ask like, hey, what do you know about Broomstone? What do you know about the Anger? What do you know about, and they just sort of ask these random questions. Yeah. Ephid basically says like, well, yes, of course, Broomstone's coming in here constantly, but doesn't know any more details other than obviously it must be something incredibly dangerous, and it likely isn't related to using it for flying ships either. Also asks about the person who dropped off the letter that Ashton received, and Ephid says it was a nicer person, dressed quite nice. And then also asks about the Anger and the Loomis twins, and just basically tries to get more information there as well, and doesn't really get any new insights. But there is one last detail. Fern asks Ephid not to leave and says, you remind me of a friend of mine, Dr. Nesbit. It was a bird that she had that she named that. So Ashton, interestingly enough, gives Ephid 50 gold to stay on his good side. And, other than that, the only added detail about the Anger was that he was a bodyguard for the Loomis twins, which we already knew, but that everything basically fell apart. I mean, everything like went to crap pretty much. So after this detail, they decide to go see Lord Esteros, and he's having his breakfast, and By the way, I forgot Yash had given everyone coffee, and F.C.G had dumped the coffee inside of him to like store it like an incubator. And there was this great scene where he offers Lord Esteros the coffee, and he's like, "Why is it so warm?" It just was a really funny scene. They do talk more about having seen the Who Bought Corsairs and being willing to organize that meetup still. But Laudna actually points out that there's this rumor that Esteros has actually killed Madame Prudage, the former owner of the home that he was the bodyguard of. And very deliberately, he points out, I've served her for the better half of my life. Absolutely would never do such a thing. Ashton does an insight check after he's like, is no one going to challenge this? And gets a whisper similar to Laudna getting a whisper. Or no, Orym getting a whisper. Or wait, no, it was Laudna who got a whisper earlier on. A lot of whispering going around, by the way.
Yeah, there was.
They ask again about the Loomis twins and just trying to follow that trail. And Esteros points out that the Loomis twins are actually dead, that they were killed in this attack. And Ashad, even though he had agreed to organize a meetup, Ashad is still recovering and seems to be asleep. Seems to be in some kind of like induced coma while he's recovering.
Yeah, like got messed up pretty bad, I guess.
Yeah, and there's like whoever his keeper is or steward is, that person is just like, it's not time yet. Mm-hmm. Other than that, they're kind of like, what do we do now? And Esteros is like, hey, at the Dreamscape Theater, there's been missing patrons. People have been disappearing up to groups of 4. Maybe you can go check that out. And so they're like, okay, yeah, let's do it. Also, I should mention, by the way, through all this stuff happening, they're also like workshopping group names.
Oh yeah.
And so they had asked a couple of different names. They had come up with like, okay, Bertrand Bell. So maybe like we're the Trouble Bells or something. And Yash had been like, please don't use that name. And if you do, don't associate me with you guys. Esteros also is like, yeah, you guys are kind of eclectic. So they're like, are we like the eclectic company? And they're like, no, that's terrible. So they're working out the whole time. Just moving along, they do make their way over to Zidana's home, who is the old woman that Laudna and Imogen have been staying with, and mentions that Zidana mentions that she had been a crafter of pottery for the Mahan houses, and even tells them how they can find some of her work. And separately, they all kind of get into Imogen's room in this very tight space where Orym feels comfortable sharing more about what happened that led him on his mission. And apparently, several years ago, an attack was made on the Voice of the Tempest, where the people who attacked, the attack was very quick, and then they melted away into nothing. Very vague and ambiguous. Supposedly, the attack in Drusar was very similar. Mm-hmm. But Esteros also mentioned earlier that there's really no other details because this attack apparently came from within the house. And the party actually supposes that maybe it's one of those holes that Duggar snotted out of. So Orym does mention, Laudna asked, did you know anyone who was killed? And Orym says, yes, I did. And which is an interesting detail we might talk about later. But ultimately, that's why they're here, is to figure out if there's any sort of connection and what's really going on with that. The party makes their way over to the Dreamscape Theater. It is very bougie, very gaudy, really sticks out like a sore thumb. And they're trying to find a seat, but the tickets are pretty much sold out. And then Dorian pays 10 platinum, which is like 100 gold, to the host person who's like, oh yes, right this way, sir, to your box seat. And Fern actually does manage to steal back 6 of those platinum out of the person's coat. Once they've sort of seated and they're sort of waiting for the show to begin, the host mentions to Dorian, hey, there's a patron who wants to see you. And everyone's kind of like, well, who wants to see you? And he's like, yeah, to bring him up here. And they're like, oh, well, they want to see you privately. So he's like, okay, guys, I'll be right back. Goes down. It's this hooded figure who's like, what are you doing here? And Dorian's like, who are you? What's going on? Reveals himself to be Dorian's older brother, Cyrus Wyvernwind, I think.
Yeah, Wyvern.
Yeah, Cyrus, though, his older brother. And Dorian is astounded. He's like, how did you get here? Like, how did you get away? And he's like, I followed your lead. I did what you did. And so his older brother seems to be taking the same path that he did as well. They agree to meet and talk later. And then Dorian makes his way back upstairs where people are like, what was going on? And he says, oh, it was just, a fan who had seen me perform somewhere else, because I'm from here. And they just wanted, to say hi. So, and then that is essentially the episode. That's what happened on episode 6 of Critical Role Campaign 3.
Yes, sir. Well done.
So much stuff. I hate that it's a day before because I love the journey of like getting people's perspectives, thoughts, all those things. But first impressions on the episode?
Yeah, I loved it. I think I've mentioned this before, but these are honestly my favorite types of episodes. I love a good intense combat session, but I'm really here for the RP. So like that drinking game they played, that was like, a feast for me because I loved like finding out those details, and I want to steal that that game idea for the next time I play D&D.
Shamelessly stealing it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because I'm leading a campaign, and so I'm like, can I do this next Tuesday? Does that work?
You should, man, for sure.
So yeah.
So loved that, and we got so many reveals. I mean, not least of all the one in the final moments where freaking Dorian's brother shows up. Loved the episode, and Effed, bro, maybe my new favorite NPC. That Matt just does such a great job of like painting a character, and that he was just so creepy and stuck with me. But yeah, love the episode. What about you?
Had crazy eyes. I love the episode. Definitely it's one of those episodes like where you hit the pause button, because I was watching on YouTube. You hit the pause button, you're like, dude, so much to talk about. So many great insights. Finally got the confirmation that Laudna is quasi dead, I guess. And I mean, it was definitely like so many story tidbits that happened so quickly that I wasn't also expecting to happen so fast, in the sense of like so early. And I'm fascinated. I'm really fascinated about each character's backstories. I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and I was like, every character is so enthralling. Like I'm so invested in each character. I mean, it's we got so much great stuff, and it just really makes you wonder, like, you're starting to also see like some of the connections too. Like, the Mahan house, the attack on the Loomis twins, and how the attack presumably came from inside, and the party supposed maybe it was one of those holes that we've seen. So those kinds of breadcrumbs are also kind of fun too, of like, okay, I'm seeing the interconnectedness of the story as well.
Right.
So which there's so much happening here, by the way. It kind of makes you wonder, like, this is one city on one continent, and there's presumably going to be so much more elsewhere too. So it's pretty cool.
For sure. Where to start? Yeah, I mean, we kind of just, this is a weird place to start, but since that's what we just talked about, maybe the like attack.
Yeah, sure.
We finally found out, which we kind of knew, but why Orum's here, what he's doing. And we did find out that he, I think we kind of had wondered, like, does he work for Keyleth or for the Ashari again? Because it's kind of been like this cloudy area of like, what is he doing? Because he says he wants a new start. But we basically found out that he doesn't really. It's just that they heard about this attack in Drusar, and noticed the similarities, and they know that Orum is like a traveler and kind of does this type of stuff. So they kind of just more so asked him to investigate, rather than like him still being the voice of the Tempest's personal guard type of thing. But
it lowered the stakes a little bit, in the sense of thinking that they were there as like a continuation of EXU. It seems like you said, like, hey, we got this random attack that we heard about. It's very similar to one years ago here. Can you go see what's up with that? And I don't mean in a bad way lowered the stakes. It helped me frame their mission in less urgent means, rather than like, what's going on? Is it related to some stuff in EXU? So which presumably, I guess they sort of finished like what they were doing with EXU, because the impression I got was, whether they were called back or went naturally, Fern mentions that she went with them to Zephyra as well, and saw the city, or saw the country, or whatever. So anyway.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to forget about that part. But so we now know that this doesn't have any connection to the EXU stuff. So, will we ever find out where that led? Is it still an open string that we may pick up? Is it done? Um, again, I guess this is a good time to plug our video. If you haven't seen it, if you didn't watch EXU, we just put out a video last week about stuff from EXU that you might need to know for campaign 3.
Right.
So I'm not going to dive into that here, but there were some pretty big question marks at the end of EXU. So I'm honestly kind of surprised that this isn't tangentially related. And this is just a completely new mission based on an attack years ago. So it'll be interesting to see if that stuff ever gets picked up. But anyway, the attack...
People should watch that video though for not that we're getting onto this yet, but when we get to talking about Dorian and some of the important things that happened with him this episode, there's definitely context in that EXU video that if you're watching this now and you didn't see that, you might want to check out that video just to have some added details. Because unlike what we're saying with the story being, disparate or disconnected, from Orum's mission, it does seem like Dorian's story is picking up off the details from that he shared in EXU. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's interesting these attacks because one, you mentioned that in the Loomis situation, the attack seemingly came from inside, which meaning like we didn't really get explicit definition on what that meant, but to me, I take it as like there was no break-in, there was no like forced entry, so like
right.
That could just be as simple as someone left a door unlocked, or it could be magic, or a Duggar hole. But what the interesting connection to me was the fact of in Zephyra the attack, which you mentioned. Orum says, and he's witnessed this personally, just the attackers just like melting, vanishing with no trace, not leaving ash, not leaving anything behind. They just disappear.
I didn't understand if that was like purposely vague, or I was having a tough time. Like I was like, but what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I don't know. It seems like Orum would, if it had been like they teleported away, I feel like he would have known and recognized that and said that. So I feel like the fact that he says that they just vanished is like, it's some creature or something that just poofs out. Is it from a different plane of existence and it poofed out when it took too much damage, or I don't know, a lot of mystery, and we don't really know. What's interesting is the attack in Orum's home on Zephyra was on Keyleth, who is their leader, but the attack here was on the Loomis twins, which we don't really know much about them, but so they might be very, very influential and important. But to me, like, the voice of the Tempest is like 6 degrees of like powerful and influential above just some like random royal family. So I'm wondering like what the connection is here. And there's I mean, I don't really have much to go on here because it's just a big mystery, but I'm just very curious about what we're unpacking here.
Especially like the time jump of, I think you said
a couple years.
Yeah, it had been some time. And so the attack on Keyleth, not only is it like, I guess if it was an attack on like a king or something, it would kind of make sense. But, and I'm not saying this in the sense of like it's bad writing. I'm just saying like it definitely leaves more questions than gives answers, in the sense of the levels of authority are very different. There's been a large time jump, and we're in a location hundreds, thousands of miles away from Zephyra.
Yeah.
So the connecting the dots is very strange. But I mean, I guess that's why Orum was sent on his mission, was this doesn't make sense. What's going on there? What's up with that?
Exactly. And I wonder, still, this is just kind of a weird jump, but speaking of, Brejio, since he was the one that, has this information, hopefully, do we still think it's Travis's character? The fact, because, I mean, I kind of want to transition to Brejio if you're cool with kind of leaving the attack, because we found out a lot more about him. That one, he seems like it's going to be pretty old, but I mean, he may be a race that's irrelevant. He could be 150, but maybe he's a druid.
Yeah.
You know?
So we got context of this person being a mercenary of some kind and having sort of spent their life as like a, what was it, like the bar? Like Bar's Noom is like, oh yeah, the anger will come in and like break up,
Yeah, he like
violent
breaks
bar
up
fights.
fights. Yeah.
Had to get a real job and so became a bodyguard, right? So it definitely, and I think they said like it's been years since that happened, and so like the
Right.
reputation of the anger is kind of faded. So I agree with you. I have the impression of someone seemingly older. There was also a comment of this character being a bit of a sellsword, which could be used as just a synonym for mercenary, but it did make me wonder if that was a tiny clue into, because we've all been asking like what class would Travis be playing. If he is a Shud Brezio, then I assume some kind of physical combat.
Yeah, some sort of melee.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, for me, I don't know if it is Travis or not. I think right now it's the easiest line to draw, in the sense of, we know there's sort of like this implicit like buildup of who's Travis's character going to be.
Yeah.
It almost feels like it'd be a bit strange for it to just now be this random person. So it seems like it's building up to that, but also I'm definitely getting to the point where like I'm just like, okay, I want Travis back. I want Travis at the table. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think he might not be Brezio?
I mean, we've been leaning towards that this whole time, right? And I think I'm still probably on that side of the scale. But I don't know why, but the fact that he's like, I mean, Bertrand was old, so maybe he was just priming himself for an older character. But that made me think, well, maybe it's not. But that's not really a good reason for me to have waffled on this, because like he might be, like we said, he might be a race that he's still in the prime of his life.
He could be a 12-year-old boy for all we know. Just go the totally different way.
Exactly. But yeah, I don't know. It just, since, you know, he definitely seemed to be like, I mean, I guess I have no reason to think this, but I was assuming he was kind of in like the twilight years, but maybe he's still strong and as kicking as ever. But yeah, I did get the sellsword vibes you did as well. So I was wondering, okay, we already have a fighter. Not that they couldn't have two. They've had two of the same class before. But I was thinking maybe rogue, because Travis has already played a barbarian, and I really don't think he would do that again. But yeah, I mean, I guess money on the table, I still think it's his character, but I have doubt now.
Yeah. I could see it being a rogue. That's kind of what I would envision. And then race-wise, I'm really curious what race he'll be as well. So I kind of envision a dwarf.
I do too. I don't know why.
That's my call for now. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, speaking of calls, I'm just gonna hop on that segue. I have to mention this. The fact that there is a rumor that Estros is a vampire. I just gotta give you props, man. Episode 1, this guy was like, I think he's a vampire.
Count it.
It's like,
count it. Yeah, I got real vampire vibes from him. I think we might have even said like potentially like a werewolf or something, but they mentioned, so here's the couple of details. They mentioned that Yash mentioned that he never leaves his home. So we knew already that he was a bit of a recluse, but Yash adds the additional detail of not only is he recluse, like he literally does not leave. Like he has totally isolated himself in this estate. And so I think that gives more credence to the theory. But on the same token, I don't know if I see Matt revealing that offhand, but maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
It seems like it seems like if he was, Matt wouldn't be like, maybe he's a vampire,
right?
You know,
right?
But it does make me wonder if we know there's something tricky about Madame Prudage's death. We know that there's a rumor that she was killed by him. We know that he seems committed to her legacy and protecting her, and has sort of like stewarded her home. So maybe there's some weird, like, you know, vampire ceremony that happened or something. I don't know, but it definitely seems like there is something that was, maybe he didn't overtly kill her, but there was like maybe like a mercy killing or related to the predicament he's in now. I don't quite know, but there's definitely something there in terms of he's not just a normal orc. I guess.
Yeah, interesting.
Half orc or half orc. I can't remember.
I get the vibe that he was, I guess, in love with her.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I don't know. I mean, because he said like he worked for her for a really long time, right? And then she died and passed it on to him, which presumably he hasn't always been a recluse because he talked about his time as a mercenary, like he had his own adventuring party and stuff. So surely,
Right.
I mean, I guess he could be lying, but it's interesting that if he is a vampire or whatever, then he hasn't always been. Something happened. But yeah, I do agree with you that like if the reveal is that he's a vampire, it kind of like softens the blow since Matt like introduced that theory himself. But I think clearly the fact that that even happened means that those kind of clues were there. So again, I just have to applaud you for having that since episode 1.
We like to promote our awesome theories and ignore everything else that we said
That's
that did not happen. So
that's right.
So we get it right every 60% of the time. We are totally right. So every time. Yeah. And I'm trying to think of like what other calls we've made. The other big call that I'm still waiting on is that the Derolo rat is Laudna waking up, in which we got the detail that she did die. It's very interesting that she has a pulse. So I think it's fair to say she is in this sort of like Princess Bride-esque, only mostly dead. Where the F.C.G like feels her pulse and there's this very, very slow pulse. So she seems to be in this like weird middle ground. But one of the other calls that I'd made was that, and she mentioned she woke up. She didn't say a tomb, but she said she woke up around a bunch of other dead people.
Right.
And my theory is that is the Pate de Rolo was, one of the dead rats in there, feasting on the corpses, I guess, or I don't know. But
makes sense to me.
Which, what the heck's up with that?
Yeah.
So let's do we need to just pull the Band-Aid off and just like dump in some spoilers, or like, because like we keep getting details that I'm like, dude, I need to like fast track campaign 1 or something, because we keep getting these breadcrumbs that I'm like, I don't know the details of that. But I was watching, and this is part of the fun parts of Critical Role, is seeing other people's reactions. I was watching Liam O'Brien. I was watching Ashley Johnson.
Yeah.
When the Briarwood person was speaking to Laudna, like they were like, what? And I don't know the context of that. I'm like, this seems like a big deal, but I don't know what's happening. So do we just need to like rip this off and like get this over with? Or like, am I keeping myself from a really awesome, I don't know, man. I want to know what's going on and like the weight of it, but I don't want to ruin it. But I'm just like, kind of like Fight Club, it's like, don't spoil Fight Club for me. And it's like, bro, it's been like 15 years, man. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that is interesting. I think there's a level of stuff that I think we can talk about that like I think is just interesting for people like you or anyone else that hasn't seen campaign 1, or people that have and just want to like talk about it. So I think there's a line, I don't know, we could try to kind of dance around it between like talking about what's readily apparent and not like diving into the nuance of like,
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, but yeah, I loved watching their reactions, especially Taliesin, and he was like, "Oh, like I just put this together," and that was funny. But yeah, okay, so let's unpack Laudna. So we find out, and just jump in if you have any like specific question about something. But I'm just gonna kind of like build a picture here.
I'll let you unpack, but I'm unclear on the Briarwood's role in this part of the story, because I feel like I remember I watched like 15-20 episodes of campaign 1. I feel like the Briarwoods,
you must have been like right at that part, like right where that was starting, I think.
Yeah, I feel like they were related to Percy. I think it was in the intro, like when they give everyone's backstory, and the Briarwoods had come to Percy's home, I think, and then caused a rebellion and like killed his family, I think. Again, this is all in the intro of like the opener. And so now I'm unclear, because I'm like, okay, were they? So unpack it for me without, I guess, while towing that line, and we'll just go from there, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So this is all stuff that like they've even talked about already in campaign 3, like in earlier episodes. When they found out she was from Whitestone. So Laudna's from Whitestone, which is this big city in Exandria, that originally was ruled by the Derolos, which is just like this wealthy, affluent family. And one of the characters in campaign one is a Derolo, Percy. Um, so his
Oh, okay. That's
yeah,
Percy's last name. Oh, okay. I
yeah.
gotcha. I
So
thought this was like a totally different house. That I was like, man, the Briarwoods are really big on like
they do this
screwing
all
up
the
with people's
time.
homes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how did no one see this coming? Okay. This makes so much more sense now. Okay, keep
Yeah,
going.
and so and again, this piece of information I'm spitting out is like in the character introduction for Percy. So like this part doesn't even spoil anything from campaign one. It's literally like the backstory they give you before you start. But so his family ruled Whitestone, but there was like this violent coup where the Briarwoods came in and like killed all the Durolos and like took over Whitestone. And except for Percy, obviously he got away.
Oh, so he's the long lost son.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
so the Briarwoods were, these evil people that took over this city, and where this Laudna kind of fits into this is it seems like once the Briarwoods were already in control of Whitestone, um, she was I guess we don't know how old she was, but Laudna is a young girl that has arcane abilities, right? And her family are simple farmers, so they're like, we're gonna get a better life for our daughter. Let's presumably give her to the Briarwoods because she's got these special abilities. Maybe she can have a better life by going with them. And so they do that, and then here's where the kind of blanks are missing is the Briarwoods kill Laudna? Just why? We don't know. Is it part of some ritual, which they're into some weird shit, and I don't want to get too much into it because I don't necessarily want to spoil that. But the Briarwoods
Yeah.
are evil and
Okay.
are into some dark shit.
She does mention she thinks she was killed by like some kind of necromantic power or something. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Checks out.
presumably the Briarwoods kill her maybe as some sort of sacrifice, like some sort of ritualistic sacrifice, because she does mention she wakes up with a bunch of corpses, right? So maybe a lot of people were sacrificed, or maybe these people just died in a skirmish or something. I don't know.
Okay. So I was thinking died in the coup, but clearly not.
Yeah, I was originally
Okay.
thinking that too, but the fact that like she was given to the Briarwoods presumably implies that
Okay,
they
yeah.
were already in control, right?
Well, my confusion was like they called them the stewards, so I didn't know if like the Briarwoods were like the janitors of Whitestone and like, let's take over. And she was working as like a protege, I don't know.
So yeah, I mean,
This is great. This is great info though. It makes me regret not having watched campaign one because I'm sure these moments are even more like, oh my gosh, like when you've seen the first campaign. So
yeah, and so here's where it gets a little tricky that I don't really want to like. I mean, maybe we just decided to talk about this and give a spoiler warning, but I'm not ready to do that yet before we've like talked about that. But so Briarwood's evil. What's interesting is now that so there were two main Briarwoods, I should say, Delilah and Silas, and presumably this isn't like full out confirmed, but it's pretty obvious that Delilah is the patron of Laudna because she says like "Hi D."
yeah, that's the implication I got. Yeah.
So it's well, again, this is spoiler stuff that they themselves have already talked about, but clearly, Whitestone gets taken back, and it's like a normal place again. So, it's interesting is like how did Delilah, like she's a patron now, so that's kind of where these question marks are. And I mean, I have ideas, but that's the stuff I don't really want to get into. But yeah, and it's like I don't know.
So Laudna's patron is some psycho killing person who's also dead and has somehow ascended to, because aren't they gods or
they don't have
deities
to be
or
they don't have to be like a god, but it's just like like you can be there, you can be lower than that. So she's not a god.
So less god and more like you know,
like
who's the bad guy in Harry Potter?
Voldemort.
Yeah, more
Yeah, just
Voldemort-esque
like
of
very
like
powerful entity.
around and yeah, okay.
Which I mean, this is just I don't really like know enough to. I'm just gonna say it. I don't think she's necessarily dead. I feel like she maybe isn't dead because like if you're dead, you can't really be like a patron, right? Like I don't know.
know.
That's kind of blurry territory, and I don't really
Let
know
us
how
know
that
in the
works.
comments your thoughts on the rules of patronage.
Yeah.
So does that okay? So she does not die in campaign 1 then? I'm presuming? If you say that?
I mean,
all right. We'll leave it. We'll leave it there, I guess.
we might talk about that later. But yeah, there is a lot of stuff I could postulate on and fill in some blanks here, but I just
oh my gosh,
don't know if
we
we're
just,
ready.
we
to
just need to
yet.
watch campaign 1. We just need to watch this,
bro. I'm down for a rewatch, man. I've only ever seen it the one time.
Yeah, I just need to watch this again and go from there, I guess.
It's so good, dude. And yeah, it definitely. I mean, that's a pretty massive connection, but it'll be interesting to see like what other connections there even are, because at least in campaign 2 compared to campaign 1, they didn't. There were a few really cool Easter eggs and a couple moments, but there really weren't substantial connections at all. And not that this might. I mean, even if she is her patron, it's not like doesn't necessarily mean like, oh god, you have to watch campaign 1. It still might just be.
Yeah. Okay.
You know. Anyway, I digress. But yeah.
So what do you think? What do you think's the meaning of you know, some things are better left unsaid?
I think she just was upset that she told people like clearly Delilah Briarwood doesn't want people to know that maybe one, she's still a thing, or two, just knowing what like I know and what you know you can just generally ascertain that she's not a good person. You know, maybe she is just you know doesn't want that stuff out in the open if she's got some like you know machinations working behind the scenes. It is very curious like what she wants, because you know if you're a patron you give people power because you're having like you have an ultimate goal, right? So
right, and a lot of mentions that she hadn't heard from her in a while also. So I'm like D, what you doing when you're not talking to Laudna? So
and also well to answer that question, I feel like she is probably pulling other strings, right? Like if she has
that's what I thought too. Yeah.
If she has Laudna, then she has other warlocks, you know, it's not just Laudna. But what was interesting, I thought, is that we found out Laudna had abilities like innately, like when she was born, which I think this kind of is the I don't know what the word I'm looking for is here, but like the explanation for the fact that she's sorcerer and warlock is that like she maybe was born sorcerer and had kind of, you know what I mean? And then the warlock was from when she was resurrected, you know, or whatever. And, you know, with presumably Delilah being her patron. And I thought it was really cool that, you know, her and Imogen were talking about like, you know, cause she kind of threatened Laudna a little bit, being like, you know, don't go talking about this kind of stuff. And Imogen was like, has she ever done that before? Has she ever like punished you? And she's like, no, but you know, she just threatens to take away my gifts, you know, her warlock abilities, which I love this as like a character development. Is that's kind of the explanation for why she is taking levels in sorcerer, because she's kind of like trying to gain ability and then just not even have to worry about, you know, if Delilah takes away her powers or whatever. So I just thought that was a super cool like
and
way to explain the multi-class.
Matt even had some kind of line where like Laudna even asked like, has anything happened? And Matt sort of like, you know, smiled wryly and was like not yet, like nothing's happened yet. So you're kind of like, ooh, what does that mean? So it's props to Matt for this grander narrative and then these little story details being woven in such a smooth way. Nothing really feels out of left field, and nothing feels like what's up with that? Like, why is this? What's going on here? Why is this person here? You know? And so, like, even like Dorian's brother, which I don't know, are we gonna eventually be calling him Bronte? Who knows? Which again, if you didn't watch EXU, that's his real name, Bronte. And what we also found out from EXU is, you know, he mentioned it in this episode. By the way, are we done with Laudna? Or
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
I think so.
So what we also found out from EXU was he tells a story of where he's come from, but he's making it very vague. And he essentially talks about being an heir to a kingdom of some kind, and there being drama between him, his parents, and his older brother. And so now, presumably, that brother has shown up and also is seemingly, I mean, this family must put a lot of pressure on their kids, because seemingly has also, for similar reasons, has opted to leave the family and follow Dorian's lead. I don't know, what's your take on all of that?
Yeah, see, yeah, very interesting. But one thing that kind of on that note about like the pressure of, if they are princes, which he said they weren't, but the pressure of like following in the high expectations or whatever is I thought was interesting is during the drinking game, somebody like asked that essentially. I don't remember the exact words, but they were like, "Oh, too big of shoes to fill, so you ran away." And he said, "No, it was like my own expectations that I like wouldn't be able to fulfill, so I ran away." So that was just like an interesting twist on it to me, because the assumption would be, too much pressure, but he made it seem like it was something else.
And it could theoretically be both. I mean, it could be that's his reason, but the brother, because his brother next in line, so to speak,
right?
Similar pressure, but it was extroverted pressure rather than internal. So it could be both, I guess. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, yeah, you're fine. And so I don't know. He's just been so vague about it. We don't really know what that means. But the fact that this is kind of out of left field, but it entered my mind when he said it was like his own stuff. Is part of me wondered, is it like continuing the family line? Like Dorian, we haven't really found out much about Dorian, but maybe he's maybe he's not straight, maybe he's bi or gay or asexual even.
Yeah,
and like
I can see that. Yeah.
Like I can't give this family its next heir. And so maybe he was like, I don't know. That's like I said, it's kind of random, but I was just trying to think of ways, or like what he could have meant by not being able to fulfill his own whatever. But yeah, as far as that, then it wouldn't make sense of what the brother's situation was. But clearly, okay, sorry, I know I'm rambling like crazy here, but the other tidbit of this information is the fake story he told Dariax and EXU, which was, and I'll give a really quick nutshell. He was kind of messing with Dariax, who was Matt's character in EXU.
Right.
He was kind of messing with him and telling him, because he's been really secretive about his past, and so he kind of leans into Dariax and is like, "Hey, I'll tell you the truth." And he goes, "My family were these like famous circus performers, like trapeze artists or something," I think he says. And he basically says that his father performed for a king, and the king like loved it so much that he was like, "You're going to perform for me always." And Dorian's father was like, "Nope, I'm getting out of here. You're not going to like control me." And so the king was upset by this and put out a hit on Dorian's father. So Dorian says that, like if anyone were to find out that I'm this guy's son, they're going to be after me too. So that combined with what we seemingly do know about the wealthy, whatever, is just kind of interesting, trying to marry those two. Because like, is it just like stealth expectations and not necessarily wanting to live that life, or is there also an aspect of like that family is like wanted and potentially out to be killed type of thing?
Yeah. Well, he has an extra detail. He says, so we know, confirmed, that from Marquette, which we knew, but we had some conversations about it earlier also. But he also says he's from a family that you would never have heard of, or something like that, or maybe like where they're from you would never have heard of. Which maybe it is a very localized place in Marquette that's sort of isolated, but that they are a very famous family is another route that I went in my mind. Because intersecting the fact that he apparently comes from money, there's a bit of a royalty element to it, and yet this sort of unknownness of it. Like those two things are kind of hard to pair hand in hand, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to ask you about that. Because what is the context of him saying "I am from here"? Do you remember? Like, who is he talking to?
It's So the original comment is something about when they're first arriving in episode 1, and it's almost there was some comment around the familiarity of
Like
him
he'd
having
been there
been
before,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, and then even tells them about, I've stayed a night here, all that stuff. But I think, man, I'm not sure. I was looking for my notes and I already closed them, I think. I'm not sure when he says it, honestly, but he makes some comment of like, it's, you wouldn't have heard of them or something like that.
Was it during the drinking game?
I think it would have had to have been. I don't know where else it would have come up.
Yeah.
So
I remember that catching my ear because you and I had talked about like, well, is he from here or is he just visited in the past episodes? So when he said that, I was trying to piece together if that was him deflecting and that maybe it was not true,
okay.
or if it was true.
Yeah.
So I'm still not convinced that he's actually from here, but
yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, it's a great point. He's had a history, especially in EXU, of giving half truths, and so it could absolutely be the case. Yeah, you're right. I have no idea, honestly. There was something else that his brother Cyrus said that I don't remember the exact phrasing, but maybe you do, where Cyrus is explaining like, I followed your lead, but then he has this comment that he says, something like we're destined to be wanderers, something like that. Do you remember that line?
Kind of.
There was some comment around like wandering and like we're meant to wander or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was almost even like this, like, yeah, that's, we're following our, what we're meant to do, I guess. But it made me think about the comment in EXU when Dorian talks about when the cities fell.
Right.
The air cities that the air genasies were a part of, I guess.
Well, at least that's what we imply him to have meant. I think he just said like when my people fell, and that's all he said.
That's right. That's right. Yes, great point. So like maybe his people have like seen this as like a curse or something of having to like now walk and wander the lands with everyone else. I don't know. I thought that was a really interesting line. Yeah. And it feels like there's a really light tie-in with his comment earlier about when my people fell. So what's up with that?
Yeah, and I don't want you to just like run back in circles here, but it's just interesting because like we have that story that I just referenced of them potentially like being on the run from something, but then we have these implications that they have just like voluntarily left their family, and presumably their family is not on the run. They're okay. They just Dorian and Cyrus just wasn't for them for whatever reason, right? But I think one thing is, Cyrus is like, we need to talk, so we don't really know what they're talking about, but and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like Dorian asks, like, how are mom and dad? Which one, that means they're alive. So if that story was true, his dad did not get murdered or anything. But two, I feel like his brother is like, well, we need to talk. So that makes me wonder, did something happen to their parents? And maybe that's why I don't know. I don't know. And I also want to know, he said, how'd you get away? And he goes, the same way you did. So I wonder what that is. Like, did you have to escape? Like, there's so many questions. I don't have any answers.
So. That was really interesting. How did you get away was definitely a curious line of, were you sort of not imprisoned, but like, really had to be a big breaking out type of action, or I didn't know if he was just saying like method wise, like, how did you leave? And like, oh, I just, got up and left, just like same as you. I don't know, but and I hate to say this, I have to leave in like 2 minutes. Okay. So we still have so much to talk about. I feel like there were so much great things in this episode. We've been running, I guess, for about an hour and a half now. What other things do you want to talk about real quick before we wrap up?
Oh man, do you have anything in particular? While I just am scoping the notes?
I'm so curious about F.C.G. and like his like program. Like they were really deep diving on his origin story, and it I think Fern or someone made a joke of like, is that like forbidden access? Like you're not allowed to like go back to that.
Right.
Really curious about that. I'm really curious about Dorian and the 10 platinum. Like that was such a crazy. I mean, it's such a crazy decision, I guess. And then in general, the Dreamscape theater, I'm really curious about that as well. But
yeah, All right, well, let me
Now
just hit a couple quick bullet points then.
excuse me.
F.C.G, I agree. And, you know, we get the next episode coming out tomorrow, so we could even talk about kind of some of these things, you know, in our next episode. But yeah, super interesting that he, like, that those memories are presumably kept from him, or he can't, you know, access. We don't know how he works, but you know what I'm saying? Uh, Definitely a lot of intrigue there. I guess I'll leave it there for now. But then Dorian and the Platinum, I mean, to me, that's he's just wealthy, but also while it initially sounded like pretty crazy, I realized it wasn't. It's not that insane because they told them it was 10 gold each to sit in the front, and there's 7 of them, so that's 70 gold right there. So the fact that he played platinum for the box seats, which are presumably more expensive than the front row seats, he
Fair.
probably didn't overpay that much, but it was still just like a baller moment of.
And they've been getting some pretty big payouts too from Lord Esteros. So
Yeah, and plus he
yeah.
may have a chunk of change from EXU, depending on how they worked that out. And then just as a final thing, really quick, I had this thought while you and I were talking about the brother and the, you know, Dorian saying like when my people fell. I wonder if there's a connection to that mystery and this broomstone we're having, because like you know, bloomstone's what makes things fly. Maybe there's like some plan to get the air genasi back
Dude,
up.
this is my point, man. The interconnectedness of
Yeah.
everything. It's just like you're just like, oh my gosh. It kind of makes you. It makes sense of like Matt, like jokes about Matt being like locked away in his office, like toiling away at campaign 3 prep, and you're just like, what all is he doing? I don't know. And like you start to see these connections. I think you make a really, and we'll probably come back to this episodes from now and be like, hey man, you made the broomstone connection with the air genasi, and I don't know, but yeah, I don't know.
We'll see.
Unfortunately, out of time.
Yeah.
I apologize. I usually don't have to leave so quickly, but we just squeezed this episode in. Hey, we'd love to know what you think, by the way, guys. You know, what did you think about the episode? What did you like about it? Hit us with your favorite theories and just insights on the episode. You can drop it in the comments below. Don't forget, we are on Twitter at the Pixelists, and we are on Spotify, the Pixelist podcast, where we will continue to post these episodes and also other shows and movies that we choose to watch. So yeah, anything else you want to say?
No. For anyone that's watching this episode, I'm very impressed because you know it's a day before the next one comes out. So shout out, appreciate y'all checking us out, and we'll see you in just a couple days. I know you got to go, but real quick, just do something crazy for a thumbnail.
Yeah.
All right.
People will be like, what was that all about? I'm like, we don't know. All right. Well, thanks for listening. We'll catch you later.
Bye, guys.